Today, I'm reacting to CNBC's recently published video, questioning what has happened to Etsy and whether or not Etsy has lost its way. Overall, the video was highly critical of Etsy and its CEO, Josh Silverman. There were some things I agreed with and others that I definitely did not. This is a video that has went viral and has received almost 1 million views. And people are talking about it all over social media. So it's something that I definitely wanted to go ahead and react to.
Etsy, the global e-commerce platform known for unique and handmade goods, reported its highest ever annual revenue of $2.7 billion in 2023. But that's not the full picture. Its gross merchandise sales, or the total value of goods sold on Etsy, declined in the same period, falling flat for the second year in a row.
So basically what's happening here is Etsy reported record revenue. However, their gross merchandise sales have not gone up. And the reason why the revenue is going up is because of increased seller fees.
And first quarter 2024 earnings results didn't look much better.
So this is a little unfair to Etsy because they're comparing it to 2020 when, of course, there were a lot of anomalies because so many people were shopping on Etsy for things like masks, which really shot its sales up and its gross merchandise sales. So let's take a look at these statistics here showing Etsy's gross merchandise sales between 2008 and 2024. I think it's important to kind of zoom out here and really take a look at the big picture of Etsy's growth. So we can see that the company started out at $0.01 billion in 2008 and during Q1, comparing that all the way up to 2019 Q3, which saw $1.66 billion in sales, and compare that to Q4 in 2020, which saw $3.61 billion in gross merchandise sales. So that's a huge jump. I mean, they more than doubled their gross merchandise sales in a single year.
Consolidated results, while within our guidance range, were not where we wanted them to be.
So what they're saying in the video is that Etsy really hasn't grown since then. However, if you notice here, it also hasn't gone down. I mean, that was a huge jump to make, to go from 1.66 billion all the way to 3.61 billion. That's a huge jump to make. That's a ton of progress. And with the economy that we're working with right now, this is a really tough and competitive economy for all marketplaces. So personally, I'm pretty impressed that Etsy was able to more than double their sales in a single year, and they still kind of have kept up these sales numbers despite a really difficult economy.
Some longtime sellers are partly blaming CEO Josh Silverman, saying his focus on profits has pushed the company away from its vision, allowing counterfeits and mass-produced items to thrive, demoralizing artists and buyers.
However, I do think Etsy has worked really hard to really cut down on the amount of sellers that are selling copyrighted and trademark infringed items. I definitely saw a lot more of these types of listings back in 2020 and 2021, and in the last 2 or 3 years, they've really kind of cracked down on this. As you'll see more in the video later, Etsy has actually removed thousands and thousands of listings that are infringing on copyright, are infringing on trademarks, or against Etsy's policies.
Competing with people who are generating art via artificial intelligence now, I can't compete. It's just junk, a lot of it.
You're just going to be a slightly more expensive Amazon? That seems like a terrible business plan.
So yes, there is a lot of junk on Etsy, but there has always been a lot of junk on Etsy. That is not anything new. There are hundreds and thousands of listings on Etsy that don't sell because they're not high quality listings. Etsy works really hard to make sure that higher quality listings are at the top of search results. So they're only going to be seeing AI generated items, if customers are liking those items and they are actively purchasing those items.
With discretionary spending down, a first quarter 2024 miss in both merchandise sales and profits, and an acknowledgement of poor execution by its CEO, Etsy's future is uncertain.
So once again, this is a really difficult economy for every platform, okay? For every marketplace. There's a ton of competition right now with companies like Shein, Temu, that they're actively competing against, in addition to the fact that inflation is up and discretionary spending is down.
As competition was stiffening, the next CEO made a big change in 2013, allowing artists to use outside manufacturers to produce their designs. The term handmade was getting looser.
So what Etsy is referring to here is that Etsy sellers can design certain aspects of a product. So for example, if you sell print on demand, you would create a design and then upload that design to a printing partner like Printify, and then they would print and ship that product for you. So you're doing the creative part of designing, but you're outsourcing the actual printing and shipping to another company. And this allows these sellers to really scale their shops. In fact, one of the reasons why Etsy allowed this to begin with was to help support some sellers who were really struggling to keep up with sales during really busy times. So for example, I found this article that was published back in October 2013 when this rule changed on Etsy that stated that Etsy had heard from a wedding seller, for example, who had said that when wedding season came around, she was in a state of mild panic because she had reached her limit and was working 18 hours a day. But with these new guidelines, these Etsy sellers were able to expand their business and really scale their business, which I think was important in supporting these sellers and their business goals. Myself, I sell Etsy print on demand through Printify, and I went into Etsy wanting to do handmade, but I quickly found that while I was working full-time with a family, it just wasn't possible. It wouldn't have happened, which is why I was so thankful to find out about print on demand and find out about printing partners like Printify that will print and ship products for me so that I can scale my business and focus on the things that I enjoy doing, like designing and customer service. So yes, it did change the definition of handmade, but it also did support a lot of sellers, and that allowed them to scale their businesses so that they could make this a full-time business and replace their 9-to-5 income.
But as Etsy focuses on a comeback, it's also angering some of its biggest stakeholders, its sellers.
Etsy has been changing how buyers interact with the platform to prioritize buyers buying more faster and staying on Etsy, not prioritizing buyers having a good experience from individual sellers.
So if you're providing poor customer service to your customers on Etsy, that is going to definitely impact your shop. So if you're not answering messages, if you're not in communication with your customers, Etsy is going to lower your shop's rankings, okay? You're going to get fewer sales. So there's a lot of incentives on Etsy to provide really good customer service, to provide high quality products.
Chiara Lore leads the Indie Sellers Guild, a labor advocacy group for Etsy sellers formed after a week-long strike against the platform. Creators were frustrated by yet another transaction fee increase and a controversial star seller program that prioritized sellers who meet requirements, like fast shipping, high ratings, and quick response times.
So the transaction fee increase was frustrating. However, you just have to keep in mind that if you're on a site like Amazon, for example, or eBay, they charge up to 15% fees, okay? So compared to some of those other platforms, Etsy's fees, even with the recent increases, are still comparatively low. So the star seller program was something that never personally really stressed me out because in reality, this was always kind of there, just sellers didn't know about it. How fast we respond to people, whether or not we were responding to people, our review ratings, whether or not we were shipping our products on time. If you weren't already keeping up with those things and doing a good job with those things, those were impacting your store. You just didn't know it. Like, for example, during the pandemic, I had some products that went out late before Etsy was really kind of understanding about it. And my shop was totally invisible. My shop's rankings dropped whenever I had any items that were late. My shop was pretty much invisible. It actually, for like 48 hours, it didn't show in the search results because those packages were late. So this star seller thing was already sort of in the works. It's just Etsy sellers weren't aware of it. And basically, to help provide better customer service and provide better shop experience, they decided to make it visible to the Etsy sellers, which I think was overall a good idea. There are some things I still don't like about Star Seller, but it was kind of already there. We just didn't know it.
Don't shut down my shop without letting me talk to a person. Don't issue a refund to a buyer without getting proof that it was damaged.
So this has been an ongoing issue for some Etsy sellers, is having their shop shut down without notice. Now, the majority of sellers do get their shops back, but still a really stressful thing to have to go through, and something that I would personally really like to see Etsy address.
It's not drop your fees by half. It's not get rid of offsite ads. It's let me opt out if it doesn't work for me.
That is something that can be frustrating as an Etsy seller, is that after you've made $10,000 in sales, you are forced to do offsite ads. It's not something that you can opt into. Before you've reached that threshold, you can just opt in or opt out. But once you've made at least $10,000 in sales, there's no longer an option. You have to do those. You have to participate in that. Now, it has brought a lot of new customers to my store, which I appreciate. It's something that I've seen other Etsy sellers comment about, that they've gotten a lot of new customers because of offsite ads. However, you really have to adjust your prices because there is a 15% fee whenever you make an offsite sale. So you do have to adjust your prices and be prepared for that if you're getting a lot of offsite ad sales.
Its deteriorating reputation is another issue the company is fighting. Sellers have blamed the 2013 rule change allowing creators to outsource their production for what they call the junkification of Etsy.
Okay, so there was a lot going on in that few-second clip there. We saw the title about the AI junkification of Etsy, and then CNBC mentioning that 2013 rule change, which are two whole different things. So once again, a lot of people confuse drop shipping with print on demand, with using an outside manufacturer, okay? And they're not the same thing. So with drop shipping, what's happening is someone's buying something really low cost on Temu, for example. It's not something that they've made themselves. It's not something that they've designed in any way. They just purchased it for a lower cost on Temu, and then maybe they would list that on Etsy. And then when that person purchases the item, it would ship from Temu, which is totally not allowed, okay? There's no creativity in that. It's not obviously not handmade, and it is definitely against Etsy's policies. So now let's compare that with print on demand or using an outside manufacturer. So for example, I use Printify to print and ship items for me. I create a unique design. I put that on a product such as a t-shirt or a tote bag or a mug, and then they print and ship that for me once a sale comes in from Etsy. Frees up my time to allow me to create new designs, to scale my business in pockets of time from home, which is 100% allowed on Etsy. And as far as the AI junkification goes, just like I mentioned earlier, yes, there's a lot of junk on Etsy. There was a lot of junk on Etsy before AI was ever introduced. But customers overall are not going to ever see this junk because if it's not a high quality listing, if a store doesn't have a high quality score for having quality listings, providing good customer service, and so forth, then they're not going to be ranking. They're not going to show high in their search results. So it's not really going to impact the overall customer experience.
This isn't a new problem, but one that some say has gotten worse as the number of sellers grows.
I want to show you the sadness on Etsy and what it's become.
Legault went viral for her TikTok exposing many of the top Etsy shops as dropshippers, or sellers who make the designs but outsource the labor to another company. Some designs are made with AI-generated images. Dropshippers are able to mass-produce items like t-shirts, stickers, and stationery.
So what's funny is most of those really top Etsy sellers, they're not dropshippers, they're digital designers, okay? Yes, some of them utilize AI, but obviously customers like them, like those designs, they like those products, and so they're buying them. Digital Tumblr files are really popular because handmade sellers, people who want that design, are printing it and creating a product that they then sell on a physical product on Etsy or maybe in person at a marketplace.
In a comment to CNBC, Etsy said that it recognizes its current definition of handmade includes a broad spectrum of items and will clarify its policies to be more transparent about what belongs on Etsy in the coming months.
So I'll be curious to see how this plays out and how Etsy goes about clarifying their policies. I'm a little nervous just because it's hard to say what that would look like and how that will impact us as sellers, but hopefully it's a really positive thing that all parties are really satisfied with.
Etsy said it removed 115% more listings for violating company policy in the first quarter 2024 than the year prior.
We've always taken down items for not complying with not handmade. That's always been a focus, but we've been getting better technology and investing a lot in that.
So Etsy has removed 115% more listings from January until March than they did in 2023. So they are working hard to remove listings who are violating the company's terms of service. However, this has also created a problem with Etsy sellers who have gotten their shops closed down, who are not violating any terms of service. So while Etsy is working hard to address this problem, it's also still causing problems for Etsy sellers. I think that in reality, most of the people who work at Etsy don't sell on Etsy, which is unfortunate because I think that if there were more people who worked at Etsy who also had small shops on Etsy and really understood the culture of Etsy sellers, that a lot of these problems would be better mitigated, because I just think sometimes they're just completely unaware of how Etsy sellers are impacted, how their AI tools are taking down and identifying listings that are supposedly violating their services.
As Etsy tries to compete with e-commerce giants like eBay or Amazon, the path for being both successful and loyal to its core principles is unclear.
Yes, Etsy has evolved because what people are searching for and what they're buying has evolved and changed since Etsy first launched. And if a platform wants to stay relevant and to continue bringing sales to the platform, you are going to see that platform evolve. So I'm not surprised that a lot of the top shops are digital sellers or print-on-demand sellers, or maybe use an outside manufacturer. So the rest of the video is all about Etsy's future. So let me know in the comments below what you think Etsy's future really is. Zooming out, I still do think that Etsy has made a lot of growth over the years, some impressive growth. I'm personally impressed with the fact they more than doubled their gross merchandise sales in 1 year and didn't see a huge dip after the pandemic was over. They kept a lot of those customers, or if they did lose a lot of those customers, they're gaining new ones to replace them. Personally, I would like to see a lot more gross merchandise sales and not just increased revenue from increasing seller fees, for example. But in the current economy, I wouldn't be surprised if Etsy doesn't see major growth even in the next 1 to 3 years. So let me know your thoughts on all of this. If you agree with the article, if you agree with CNBC, or you disagree, or any experiences that you have had. And I will continue to give you guys updates on any breaking Etsy news, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you in the next video.